Mexico creators, Lilou here. Today I'm with Philippe. With the Louvre is behind us. What a beautiful place to speak about the pyramids in Europe. You're an expert. You wrote many books. You co-host also a show, Spirit Revolution with your wife Kathleen. I just interviewed on Mary Magdalena. Another great video. This is just happening and unfolding. I just love it. Those interviews were not marked on the calendar, but Spirit is bringing us together. And because there's a big phenomenon, of course, a lot more people now these days are speaking about the pyramids in Europe, and you were there. You often, you did many documentaries on History Channel. You're a keen contributor and an author. What a life. I mean, you keep on traveling the world and learning more and more about this ancient knowledge. One of your latest books, from my understanding, also is about ancient aliens.
Yes.
Wow, we're getting into it.
Well, I mean, you know, traveling the world is really, I think, something which an awful lot more people need to do because, as you're saying, we're in a new time, and for the first time in so many decades, we can just fly around the world for basically 48 hours for a salary of a person's, a month. And that is something which is really unique. The world is becoming a smaller place. We can go and visit all of these places. And I think we really need to experience these places ourselves if we really want to get a sense of what it's all about. So I would say, everybody needs to go and do juicy traveling.
Yes. So today we're in France because you just came back from the Mary Magdalene tour. Tell us, because we just had this conversation about Mary Magdalene, why do you think it's an important conversation to have? And then we're going to go into the pyramids and the aliens.
Well, I mean, Mary Magdalene is one of those people, I think, who really is a billboard of everything which has been hidden and which is coming out. And there are some unfortunate things, like we're right behind, or in front of the Louvre, and you have the Dan Brown phenomenon, which claims that she's buried there. And there are interesting side effects to this story of, at the same time, somebody who has been literally buried underneath so much disinformation is slowly coming out. But I also think it takes intelligence and care for her memory to be revitalized in the correct way. And all of this speculation as to how she somehow is buried there or somewhere else in France, the church knows where she is buried. The church doesn't make any secret as to where she is buried. Her bones are in Saint Baume, in Saint Maximum. They are in Vézelay. There is no real mystery about her body. And that is quite often the case with so many of these things. When you are beginning to open yourself up to new realities, quite often a lot of people just jump to the easiest sort of first conclusion. And that is so wrong, whether it's Mary Magdalene, whether it's pyramid research, whether it is ancient knowledge. You shouldn't go for the most straightforward answer. You really need to keep digging. And that is really something, I think, which you also see an awful lot with, the political awakening. People are beginning to realize that there is more to politics than meets the eye. But quite often they just jump for the grand conspiracy which is happening somewhere. And that, again, is not always the correct answer. And what I try to do in most of what I write is to basically say, yes, there is something behind the scenes, but you also need to make sure that you really go deep enough behind the scenes, not just simply behind the scenes, because what you see there is just simply the reverse of what's happening in front of it.
So as an investigator and author, what is the pitfall in researching like that? Because it is really deep information, and ancient, obviously, can go very far.
Well, you need to really have a sense of, going in there with the proper techniques. You need to be open-minded, and you cannot just make big theories out of very thin material. And that is quite often what happens an awful lot. I mean, I went to Rosslyn Chapel in 1997. I was so mad about the fact that so many people had a pet theory about whatever it was. And then he said, oh, by the way, the answer is in Rosslyn Chapel. And at that moment in time, really, you have a story being created which has nothing to do with the place itself. And that happens an awful lot. And that is really the big pitfall. Don't go for pet theories. Just take the evidence and take step by step, and then the truth will come out eventually.
What are the evidence for the pyramids in Europe, and where are they?
Well, of course, there's just one behind us, but that's a recent one. But they're slowly being discovered left, right, and center. And in the case of the Bosnian pyramids, they are the biggest and the oldest. And they're really, in 2005, a local person called Samos Manigic just went to Visoko. Another local person pointed out the pyramids to him. And basically, he began to dig, and the first dig suggested that there should be further digging. And ever since 2006, Sam has really created the largest archaeological excavation in Europe. And this has created controversy because, again, you have people who have bad theories and they will either defend them or they will go and try to attach to Sam's dig. But Sam just keeps digging and he has no firm opinion. He just knows that with every spade which he puts in the ground, a new part of this pyramid complex is being unearthed and really the truth is being discovered. And that is really the exciting thing of like being able to report and being able to take all of this material step by step and just see where it goes. But definitely what's happening in Bosnia is that we're seeing that they are very large, that they are now part, more than likely, of a, not necessarily a lost civilization, but a civilization which we before didn't think was a pyramid building culture. And to go into some level of detail, Maria Gimbutas has created a civilization called Old Europe, which was in that area. We know that there was agriculture being practiced in 6000 BC, and all of a sudden we're beginning to find that the pyramids are actually a component to this lost civilization or this not well-known civilization. And again, you have the skeptics who want to defend and say no, the pyramids are this and the pyramids are that, and then you have people who say that this is evidence of an extraterrestrial civilization and all of that stuff. Truth, just again, step by step by step, and we'll get there.
How are they linked to the Egyptian pyramids?
Well, at this moment in time, we don't know. At this moment in time, they seem to predate them, and definitely when it comes to what the accepted dating of the Egyptian pyramids is, there is more a link towards the fact that there are statues in Sumeria, which is 4000 BC, and those statues have also been found in Bosnia, and they are older. So there seems to be this progression of Bosnia towards Sumeria and then maybe Sumeria to Egypt. But at this moment in time, really, again, how all of this fits together is simply not known because, again, Sam has only been digging for 6 years.
Some people say it's part of a big grid.
Again, we don't know. The only thing which Sam has been trying to do is basically show that all the pyramids in Bosnia, in this specific valley, are part of a system themselves. But beyond that, we simply don't know at this moment in time.
I know you digged into ancient aliens, so there's proof of them all along. It's been a long time. This is not a recent phenomenon.
Well, I think where we are at this moment in time is to say that our ancestors were extremely familiar with the concept of having visitations, that there were other non-human intelligences with which they interacted. And in the case of ancient Egypt, whereby you have ancient authors who say they walked amongst us, they were here. Now, a non-human intelligence, whether they were either more spiritual, whether they were contacting them, or whether they were physically there, depends from culture to culture. But in the case of the ancient Egyptian civilization, in the case of the Inca civilization, you have people in those days who said, we were not alone. And I think that's the key message, really, to go and say, whether it's real or not at this moment in time, we don't know, because that does need to engage science far more than we are currently engaging them. But what we can definitely say is our ancestors were absolutely convinced that we were not alone. And I think that is really the key message. And that is something which historians definitely need to get their heads around. Because right now they're basically saying that every civilization developed itself completely independent of any other civilization. And that is something, that's a paradigm which no longer will hold for the next few years.
In places like Peru, there's some cities that were found without the walls, like cities that just evaporate, dissipate into the light. Have you come across such stories where there seems to be a civilization that was not threatened by the outside at all, but really living in light and love?
Well, I haven't come across those in Peru in the sense that, you have pockets of still people in Peru who've not been contacted until today. You have an awful lot of indigenous wisdom, which we haven't understood properly. But I think an interesting aspect of Peru is that what we have there is that Western men only went there 500 years ago. So it's very touchable, it's very pristine. They only had to survive the church trying to destroy everything for 500 years. When we go to Jerusalem, when we go to Egypt, all of this is 3,000, years of suppression. In the case of Egypt, 2,000 years of Christianity. So in Peru, it's all far more fresh, and pockets of information are still there. Despite the fact that mass burnings of information occurred there, the people still know. The same thing in Mexico. And so once those people really feel comfortable that their message can be heard without being distorted, it will come out. And you can see that slowly in a few places that information is beginning to rise to the surface. But they will only do so when they realize that it is completely safe. And at this moment in time, there is still way too much skepticism and way too much of Western scientific mindset for them to really feel comfortable in going out completely.
What can we feel comfortable talking about now that we're finding recently and that is now accepted?
Well, I think, we're making mass progress. I mean, in 1993, the Mayan civilization was completely unknown. There was one or two books which speculated about Mayan civilization. Now it's 2012, and everywhere, even New York Times and Washington Post is reporting on this 2012 phenomenon. In 1993, that was simply impossible. The pyramids field, when you look at our understanding of pyramids in 1993 and when you look at it now, it's completely changed. We have authors like Robert Boval who've been pointing out certain things about Orion. We've seen the same things happening in Mexico. New pyramids are being found. This idea that they are purely tombs is slowly beginning to disappear. So there is this slow dissolving of the ancient mindset, and once it is really gone, I think this is the correct mindset to go forward into, of saying we need to be open, we need to move forward, but that this is slow. And I think the phase we're in right now is pretty much the dissolution of the past mindset rather than the creation of a new one.
So we're having a spirit revolution?
Absolutely. That's why our show is called the Spirit Revolution.
Yeah. How do you define it?
It really is the fact that, and it actually goes back to the 2012 phenomenon, because the Mayans said that there were 5,000-year periods, and that this mindset of 5,000 years was defined by spirit, that we really were going to do something spiritual in the period of 3000 BC to 2012. And an awful lot of that has come about with religion. All the religions have come about in this time period as well. But, at the end of it is really that I think we are forsaking religion, dogma, but that we are beginning to become more spiritual. And people begin to realize this. People are abandoning religion, but they're not abandoning spirituality. And so the spirit revolution is really the fact that spirit is coming back.
Da-da-da! This is another juicy conversation. Thank you, Philippe.
Well, thank you for having me.
Much love from beautiful Le Louvre in Paris. Bye.